This is HERkys Voice, a conversation with special Hawkeye guests focusing on the stories and people behind Hawkeye athletics. Now, here's the host of HERkys Voice, Iowa women's tennis coach, Sasha Schmid.
Welcome to HERkys Voice. I have a great episode for all of you. Today, I had the chance to sit down with our Iowa women's volleyball setter, Bayley Ortega. She is a homegrown Hawkeye who found her way to the University of Iowa's volleyball team as a walk-on, and in January of this year earned a scholarship on the team. It is such a wonderful story, and she is a gift not only to the volleyball team but to our department. And I love being able to share her story with you and have her voice go out into our Hawkeye community. You won't want to miss this episode. Enjoy taking a listen to Bayley Ortega. Welcome to HERkys Voice. We get to talk Iowa volleyball today. I am thrilled to be joined by Bayley Ortega. Bayley, welcome to HERkys Voice.
I am so excited to be here. I've watched so many of these episodes, and my mom always texts me about these episodes, so I'm excited to finally be on here.
Oh, tell your mom thanks.
Oh my gosh, yeah. My mom is diehard Hawkeye fan, and she loves anything female athletics especially, so she really loves listening to this episode.
Was she an athlete herself?
Yeah, she actually played at Western Illinois University. She played basketball, and she's always kind of motivated me to just keep pushing forward, and she always has great stories to tell me, and so I just love hearing all the things she has to say about Hawkeye athletics.
Okay, so let's talk about your family.
Okay, so my dad, he is an iron worker, so he's always kind of like the blood, sweat, and tears kind of always encourages me in that way. And my mom, something she's always preached to me and texts me every day is to be kind and classy. And that's always something that she always would say to me, and like in all the lectures she would give me, that was just something she always preached to me, and I hope to pass that on to my kids because I think it's really helped me in a lot of situations in my life. She's a real estate agent right now, and with my parents, it's actually really cool. They have never missed a collegiate volleyball game of mine.
Really?
They've traveled to every single one. So we were actually at Minnesota yesterday, and they drove there, and they drove to Indiana prior, and Jim walked up to my parents and was like, "You guys are here?" And they were like, "Yeah, like we don't miss anything." And even during my freshman season, like with COVID, they still traveled to all those games, and they were some of the only people in the stands when they could be there.
Yeah.
So, they're definitely my biggest supporters. So I always try to shout them out. They actually got a shout out on our ESPN game, and they were like their phone was flooding with text messages because people were like, "You guys are mentioned on ESPN." And
How cool is that?
Oh, it was so cool, and seeing all the people message them, and even just watching back and seeing my face on ESPN. But and then my brother, he is a med student here at the University of Iowa, and he is 6 years older than me, and he is my best friend in the whole entire world. And I was actually the best man at his wedding that happened this past summer in Outer Banks, so that was something I will forever remember, and he's going to be my man of honor in my wedding. But he's actually the biggest reason why I chose to come to Iowa. So he is, yeah.
So tell me about when you got involved in sport, what it meant to you as a young girl, like mentors. How did you find your way to volleyball?
So I grew up playing basketball and dancing, actually. I danced ever since I was a little girl, and then I eventually found my way to basketball because of my brother. My brother played basketball and baseball, and I was always in the gym with him, and people eventually called me Lil Blaine and Lil Blainer to like emulate my brother. So I kind of took on that role and just would always go to the Y with him and shoot hoops outside, and that led to my love of basketball. So then I couldn't do dance and basketball, so I kind of left dance and played softball a little bit and found my way to volleyball through his name's Frank Flanagan. He's the club director at Iowa Select in the Quad Cities, and he kind of took me under his wing and gave me some lessons. And
how old were you then?
I was 14 when I met Frank for the first time, I believe, and I was just in awe by how he coached his players. And I wanted to be a player underneath him. And after going to a couple of private lessons, I learned I felt like I had kind of hit my ceiling in basketball. I'd played for so long and I knew I loved the game, but I felt like I couldn't do much more to really improve. And that's kind of a hard thing to hit as an athlete. So volleyball was kind of like this whole new thing that I just had so much potential to explore and learn. And Frank loved that about me. And I just sat there like a sponge learning from him in lessons. And that kind of led me that year. I was on his 15s team at Iowa Select, and we were the first, I think we were the first team in the area to get a bid to nationals. Wow. And that was in the newspaper and a super big deal. And we ended up getting like a trickle down bid. And that kind of got my mind going on where I could take volleyball and what that kind of looked like for my future, and kind of started to realize that I could see myself playing it in college. So around freshman year was when it all started.
So I love talking about these people that come into our lives that and change the course.
Yeah.
So talk to me about Frank and what qualities he had that changed you, and what was it about the position, about volleyball, that you found a home?
Frank in specific, I love him so much, and I actually worked at Iowa Select, and I will work at Iowa Select underneath him and as a setting positional coach. And I think that he just oozes a love for the game, and like it's so obvious in how he coaches. And even in basketball, I'd gone through so many coaches, and something was just so different about Frank because he just knew the game down to a T. And I knew he knew the game, but he was always learning, going to conventions, watching all these things online. And like, you could just tell he constantly like knew the game, but knew he could learn more. And I just loved him because he saw something in me that no one else ever had and that I hadn't even seen in myself. And he kind of brought that out of me. And he taught me all of the intangibles that I think are really hard to coach and that are really hard to find. And he is a big reason, one of the biggest reasons that I am here. And he also introduced me to Nick Lynch. And Nick Lynch is like my setting coach that I've had for 6 or 7 years now since I started. So I started with Frank, and then one of the things I loved about Frank, he looked right at me and he said, "Hey, I've taught you a lot, but I think I've hit my mark with you." And he's like, "I feel like it's going to get repetitive." He's like, "So now it's time for you to get coached by someone else." And I've never had a coach say that to me, because I feel like some coaches will just coach and coach and coach and coach and just hope that player listens. But sometimes you just need a new person. Yeah. And he knew that, and he sent me to Nick. And that was when, like, technique wise, and even just like me as an individual on the court and leading, like, just really took off. And that was when I started getting interest, and colleges were looking at me. But I really appreciated him just looking at me and being like, "Hey, I know I've taught you a lot, but I know that you can learn even more from this person," and just kind of passed me on. And Nick is, again, those two are my two. Like, I would not be here at all without them. So I send everyone to them. I tell everyone about them, because I truly don't know if I would be the person I am, let alone the athlete I am, if it weren't for them. And they are the type of people that don't like recognition and that don't really like being in the spotlight. And I want to do that for them, because they deserve every bit of recognition, because they are just the most amazing people that I've ever met.
What was it about setting that you liked?
Oh my goodness. Well, one, I was a little short and I couldn't jump very high. So setting was kind of just my thing I kind of fell into. But I love setting because I think there's a beauty behind, I guess, like you could say, like the puppet holder, whatever that word is. But like, I think it's so cool because the setter does so much on the court. And even just down to us calling plays and like manipulating what people are doing. And I'm going to look at my peripheral vision and see what the other team is doing and then make a split-second decision on where I'm going. Yeah. And I think it fascinated me because, again, kind of like volleyball was, like, there was just such a big learning gap that I was like, I have so much to learn, and that's just so fascinating to me. And they kind of call it the quarterback of the volleyball team. And I think that's so cool. And it's also just, it creates a really cool relationship with my coaches because I'm constantly working with them. And I think that setting is something that's often underrated as well. And I've always kind of taken on being an underdog. And I just think that setting is something that not a lot of people want to do. The only reason they want to is because we touch the ball so much.
Right.
But setting is a really, really hard role to take on. And I actually talk to a lot of younger girls a lot who reach out to me and they're like, hey, like, I'm putting up a good ball. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, you gotta own it. Like, the blame's going to be put on you. And I think that also being a setter, I could see that there were a lot of life lessons that I could learn from being in this position. And I love the control that I have, and I love the IQ that comes with it, because I think, like I said, with basketball, I reached my ceiling with my IQ as a player, but as a setter, it was like the IQ is just never ending. And I mean, even at this level, I still watch setters that I'm competing against, and I'm like, wow, your IQ is unreal. I can't believe you saw that. Like, it's so fascinating. And I love seeing like setter to setter and just appreciating like the artistry almost behind being a setter.
I think setting is beautiful too. I really identify with what you're saying, and I think the intricacies that go into like volleyball, they're so expansive, and I don't have a high volleyball IQ, but even I can appreciate the multiple options that you have every single time you touch the ball, and the multiple things that are going through your head to read where your team's positioned, and also like where the opponents are, and to make those split-second decisions. It's gorgeous. Yeah,
and the other thing that I just love about being a setter is especially just collegiate volleyball in general, someone can come in the stands who's never watched a volleyball game at all, ever, and they can enjoy it because you can just see the effort and like when we're putting our all into it, and it's so obvious. But then I love that the more you learn, for most people, the more you love, because it's like, wow, that setter really read this to this, and that libero really saw the way the hitter's arm was moving and made a split-second move to get that ball up. And I think the more you learn, it's just incredible the way that athletes at this level, like the way that volleyball players' minds work, and it's so fascinating. And I love learning about the way that people's IQ and everything all kind of blends together with the skill and talent.
So I want to come back to that in a second. But so when you decided, I know your brother was here, but when you decided through the recruiting process to come to Iowa, tell our Hawkeye community how that decision was made and what the journey was like to come to Iowa and to join the Iowa volleyball team as a walk-on.
So it was really interesting. I had always come to Iowa volleyball camps and clinics just because for me, it's a 45-minute drive. And because I was in such a sponge mentality, I knew that if I could come get coached by Division I, Big Ten coaches and players, I should do it as much as I can. And I was super blessed to have the parents that were able to just drive me and kind of be all into whatever I wanted in my dreams. And so my mom would always just drive me, and we would plan to come up for clinics. And around my freshman year was when I started getting Division I interest, but it had never really been major Power 5 interest. So it was always an aspiration and a dream of mine to play at Iowa, let alone just play in a Power 5 or the Big Ten especially. So, but I kind of also swallowed the hard reality that it probably wasn't going to happen, me being 5'9", coming to the game a little bit late and not developing as fast as other people were. And I ended up on this really, really great club volleyball team called Eastern Iowa Extreme, and we ended up winning nationals. And that kind of got it rolling. And my recruiting coordinator, her name's Lauren Hansen, she reached out to me and she said, hey, Iowa volleyball's been watching you. And I was like, what? Are you serious? Like, and my brother had always teased. He's like, Bayley, like, you're going to end up being a Hawkeye volleyball player. And I was like, Blaine, no, like, it's not going to happen. I'm sorry. I hate to crush your dreams and crush mine, but I just need to understand it's not going to happen. And when they reached out, she basically told me that I would go to a camp, and this camp was like, it was it. So it was either I'm going to get offered or they're not going to be interested in me. So everything was writing on like this 3-4 hour clinic. that they had. And I showed up at the clinic, and afterwards I got pulled into the coach's office, and at the time it was Bon Shemansky, and he basically looked at me and he's like, we love everything you have to offer, and this was a last-minute decision of us being interested in your position in your class. And he was like, we know you've been coming to camps and you're an Iowa kid, so, and then he just offered me. And it was funny, going into the camp, I had thought of, oh gosh, what if they ask me? Because the harsh reality is a lot of coaches give deadlines, and I wasn't sure what the deadline would be. So I was like, what if he tells me the minute I walk out of that office, it changes, which is just something we have to kind of face in the recruiting process. And so I kind of went in with an idea, and after it happened, I was going up the Carver elevator, and my parents were looking at me, and they were all kind of whispering. And at the end of the meeting, the coach was like, you have a couple weeks to make your decision. Like, we're not putting a deadline. We don't want to rush you. We know this is a lot to take in. And we got to the top floor of Carver, and I looked at the assistant coach, and I was like, do I have to wait 2 weeks? Like, is that a thing? And my parents kind of looked at me, and she was like, what are you trying to say? And I was like, I want to be a Hawkeye. And it was like those exact words. And right by the elevator, everyone was crying and hugging. And then I called the head coach, and he was like, I wish you would have made this decision when I was in the office, but I'm still happy. And it was a super surreal moment. And I just knew, like, I knew going in that I would say yes. And so finally just saying, I want to be a Hawkeye, like I knew I did, but saying those words to the coach at the top of Carver with my family there was like,
perfect.
Oh, it was so perfect. And even afterwards, like calling people I loved and being like, I'm going to be a Hawkeye. And my brother was definitely the most excited because he had always called it. But that was, every time I go into the Carver elevator, I'm like, wow, this is where it all happened. And I can distinctly like memorize it. And yeah, that was kind of how I got to Iowa in the long story.
So then once you arrived at Iowa, talk about your journey since you've been here. Mm-hmm. And what has it been like? So
when I got here and when I was recruited, I was told that I was kind of just going to be a freshman who learned. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. Like, I'm going to play at a Big Ten school. I'm going to represent my state. Like, I will absolutely sit and just be a sponge like I've always been, and I will learn. And I ended up graduating early, so I was here in the spring, and that spring was also when COVID hit. And at the end of the spring, we kind of had meetings, and my coach looked me in the eye, and he's like, you're going to need to be ready to play your freshman year. And I was like, okay, yes, got it. Like, I had no idea. I was not expecting that, and rewarding yet terrifying for my position. And kept training. Obviously, the fall season got pushed back and ended up playing my freshman year and playing my sophomore year. And it was surreal. I feel like that's the only word that can constantly, like, just engulf everything that I've ever experienced, because being in the Big Ten and being that kid from Iowa who never expected to be here in the first place, like being across the net from people, and making those connections and making friendships like that, I just never thought I would have the chance to do. And it's just been amazing being at Iowa and hearing all the stories and meeting all the people and all of the things that I know I'll never forget being here.
So with the IQ, the volleyball IQ, which I imagine goes to a different level once you're in college in Big Ten volleyball, how are you developing that? Is it through video or like through meeting with your coaches? How is that like muscle in you grown?
Yeah, so a lot of the time with coaches, it's talking about like decision making. So, I mean, great example. Yesterday we were playing at Minnesota, and I made a decision to take the ball over instead of set our middle on a certain pass, and we ended up losing the point. And my coach Jim pulled me aside, and he's like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, like, when it's an on pass, like, it's a great pass, feed your middle, and then when it's a little bit off, see if you can get that set over and see if you can get that kill." And it was one of those moments where I was like, okay, got it. Like, just little moments like that and little interactions that it's like, if the ball would have gone down, he would have said, great, but, and still would have told me that. And that's just a really cool connection I've always had with all of my coaches that I really appreciate. And definitely just that communication and conversation always going and kind of having it be a two-way street. Because there are times where like yesterday, he looked at me and he said that, and I was like, yeah, but I wanted to see if the middle would be ready, because on a perfect pass, the middle's going to know I'm going to feed the middle. So it was a constant line of communication and just understanding and learning. And that always helps me. And I watch video as much as I can. But throughout my years at Iowa, I've also learned that sometimes I get too into the video that I tend to forget that I can just go in the gym and fix it. So a lot of times I'll watch a little bit of video and then I'm like, okay, I just need to go in the gym, or I just need to go to practice and I just need to fix it. And watching lots of video, watching lots of other setters. I am one of those girls that still fangirls to this day about girls that I'm across the net with. Like, we just played Indiana. We played at Indiana, and their setter is amazing and one of the most underrated setters, I think, in the country. And I love watching her, and I've gotten to talk to her, just like being at the USA tryouts in February. We kind of met and just kind of nodded that we know we play against each other, but I love watching her play. I love how athletic she is. Like, I love appreciating that, and I love learning from that. And I think that that's something that I sometimes get made fun of. I used to get made fun of for, was like that I would fangirl over things like that. But I just think it's so cool, because it's just such an appreciation and love for the game that she's a lefty, and that's an extreme weapon when you're a setter. And she used that against us. And that was one of the reasons that we ended up losing that match. But she used that to her advantage and ended up getting her team the win. And I applaud that, because I think that's so cool. Do we have things we need to work on? Yes. Do I have things I need to work on? Yes. But I'm also applauding the fact that her IQ is great, and she recognized our weaknesses and she went at them. And I just think that's something that I always use as a setter, is I think so many other setters in the country and in the Big Ten have strengths that I wish I had, or that I wish to improve on. So even when we play them, I just watch them, and I'll watch that game back and not even watch myself, and just continue to learn in that way, because there's so many different ways to teach setting and technique and IQ. And I love seeing how, I guess, expansive the whole teaching can go when it comes to different setters throughout the country.
I totally commend you for that. I think it's such a beautiful way to have respect for your opponents. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't need to be this, competitive thing where someone needs to be less than so you can be more than. Absolutely. All ships can rise together. Yeah. And I think Big Ten volleyball is just full of one amazing talent after another. Yeah.
One of the greatest things that I have learned in Big Ten volleyball was when I was at the Big Ten Women's Leadership Summit, and I was there, and they announced the Big Ten Volleyball Media Days happening this year. And it was the first ever. And I was sitting at, they were all kind of set up in tables when we were in this conference room. And I started to get teary-eyed, because I was like, I can't believe I'm sitting at this table in this room of women and listening to these stories, surrounded by other Big Ten volleyball players and other Big Ten athletes. And I was like, I can't believe I'm here. And I just sat there and tears came to my eyes. I was like, I truly couldn't believe it. And one of the reporters, I think she's a ESPN, she does some Big Ten stuff. She came to me and she's like, hey, I would love to interview you about Big Ten Volleyball Media Day, because I can see the passion. I can see how much it means to you. So I proceeded to go and grab all of the Big Ten volleyball girls that were there. And I was like, I want all of you to do this with me.
Bayley.
And also just a great excuse to meet them. But I went and grabbed all of them, and even Penn State just hired she's a female head coach. I think her name's Katie. And I even went and grabbed her, and we all got a picture together. And
I love this story.
Yeah, and we all kind of met each other, and we did this whole thing on Big Ten Network. And Raina Terry, she's an outside at Illinois. She is one of the fiercest, most intense competitors I've ever seen. So naturally, when I play against her, I'm like, oh gosh, she's mean, I'm scared. But when I met her, I was like, wow, you are a great person. You are so fun to talk to. And she said it so great in that little interview we did with Big Ten Network. And she was like, we all kind of have a swagger when we play, or just kind of a way we hold ourselves. But at the end of the day, we're just all people playing volleyball, doing what we love. And we happen to be in the best conference in the country. And I just thought that was so great because it's so true, because we can be at the net and we can like and like have all this anger and like want to win so bad. But after the game, like we're all just here playing volleyball, doing what we love in front of all of these thousands of people who love volleyball just as much as we do. And that was something that from that conference I will just remember for the rest of my life, because I just think being in that position in the first place was something I never thought I would do. But just hearing that and meeting those people and all of it was something that I think attests to how amazing Big Ten volleyball is outside of the records and the success. And outside of all of that is just something that I think is so unique to Big Ten volleyball that I've gotten to experience.
And it's really leading the nation in terms of putting collegiate volleyball on a new platform. Mm-hmm. The Big Ten is, the media days are great. Obviously, the attendance that we've had at Nebraska and then at Wisconsin a couple weeks ago, and then you guys having the ESPN game at Extreme Arena.
Yeah.
Talk about like moving forward at a quick pace in terms of just the profile that is being able to be expansive from what you guys, the product you guys are putting on the floor.
Yeah, I think that so we obviously just found out our ESPN game had, I think it was 230,000 viewers, and it was like the number one most viewed thing at that time in the entire country. And I made a little Facebook post about it because I was like, the little girl sitting in the stands at Davenport North would have never believed she was on ESPN, even if it was just a flash of me in the stands. Like, would have never believed it. And I went on, and even just like seeing ESPN in the corner with my face on the screen was something that I think so many athletes aspire for. And I think it's so great that as a collegiate volleyball player, we're finally getting that recognition, and it's growing. And obviously being in the Big Ten, we get a lot of attention, but I just think that it's been needed for so long, and I'm happy that it's finally happening, but I'm also sad that it's happening now, and I wish it would have happened, because volleyball has always been great and has always been loved, and I'm grateful I get to be one of the people, and I'm grateful I get to be up there, but I hope that it's not a phase, and I hope that it continues to grow, and I hope that we use this to learn that, like, all of those little girls at home, I forget what the exact graphic was for Iowa women's basketball, but they just posted it, and it was the graphic of a little girl in front of the TV, and I was like, I get to be that person for a little girl sitting somewhere, knowing that she can be a volleyball player and be on TV and be watched by her siblings and her, like, family members, and I think it's such a cool thing, and I want it to keep growing, just like women's basketball has, and just like all of these women's sports are. And I just hope that it's not a phase, and we continue to realize that volleyball is getting the attention it deserves, and it will keep growing if people keep coming to watch.
And, you know, leadership like you and passion like you and what you did even at the Big Ten conference to bring everyone together and to really make it be a collective effort. And just by bringing in those individuals, Bayley, they will feel a responsibility too, and it just grows. So like it'll happen now. Like this is what we need. And I can say like just how people like the Big Ten Network identified you sitting in the stands, being like, I can tell this means a lot to you and you're passionate. I have been in different events with you and spoken, and I'm always like, gravitate right to you because you can see your smile, you can see your passion, and I'm like, oh my gosh. It makes a difference, and I can feel that you feel the energy, and that it's so great to have somebody with your heart and passion here at Iowa as a student athlete, because it really is in the lineage of like the continuing generations. And so I can identify with that because I was just like you when I was a student athlete here. And so obviously it's such an honor to be a head coach, but then to see that grow in student athletes is what is so exciting.
Yeah. And it was, so one of the things I always wanted to be was a teacher when I grew up, because I always loved seeing that kind of like aha moment in people. And then when I found that in coaching and volleyball, I guess I'm kind of starting to have that moment and like that connection with the underclassmen. So during the coaching change that we had, I had a couple of the freshmen reach out to me, and they were like, Bayley, like, what are you doing? What's going on? And they kind of looked at me and kind of just linked onto them. And it's just a connection and just kind of
leadership.
Yeah, a love that like I've learned from so many people, and I've always wanted to be able to be that for others. And even in moments when I didn't have that, now I know what it's like to not have that, and I can take that. And I've had so many different experiences that make me want to be a coach and that make me want to continue to help people, volleyball players, believe that they can do things that they're told they can't. And
you're a coach, Bayley.
I want to be so bad.
Yeah, you've got it. It's just coming. It's like oozing out of you.
Oh my gosh.
You are.
I love it.
So let's talk a little bit about the team this year.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Tell me.
So I believe our record is 6-9 right now, but last year we had won 6 games total. So we're already at that, which is great, especially going into Big Ten play. But I think in our coach, Jim Barnes, I love the way that he holds himself. I love the way that he talks about our team. And I think he just says it best, that it's like, I distinctly remember from the first day he was hired, he walked in and the first words out of his mouth, besides of course the introduction, were that he was going to bring a team to Iowa that was going to be all in, and he would make sure all of us were all in. And he continues to preach that every single day, and it's in every single folder and in every single wall in our locker room. And I think that that's something that I never really understood until it was just kind of like you said, just like an energy that was felt. And it didn't have to be said, even though it is said, but we all just know. And everyone is just so committed, and everyone just wants Iowa to succeed. And I think that's such a powerful thing. And you can see it in everyone's eyes. I mean, after a win, you can see it because we all believe it. And after a loss, you can see it because it hurts, because we know we can do it. And it's cool to have 17 people on the team on top of all of our staff. You can just see it. And I've never experienced that in any of my teams I've ever been on in any sport. And it's such a cool feeling to be a part of, because it's undescribable to talk about how great it feels being in practice and being in games. And I think that we all know we want things to change here for Iowa volleyball, and we see the support, and our coaching staff has done great things to kind of make sure that we all know how powerful each of us as individuals are and how powerful we can be together, and talking about kind of out-teaming everyone. That's something we've also talked about a lot, especially going into Big Ten play. So I think that this team is so special, and I think people are finally starting to realize it. And I love every single one of my teammates, and I can trust them, and I can go to any of them for anything. And I don't know if I've ever been able to say that either, because there's always a couple people and whatever, but this team is just different, and that is just the beauty behind it all, in my opinion.
From a distance, you can see it happening. Mm-hmm. You can feel it, and it's to anybody that goes to a game, they are noticing the team just really having a complete culture shift in a direction that is fun to watch, has great energy, and you just know great things are coming. And there's something so special about being on the ground floor of a change like this, Bayley. And it's like you're like driving down the street and you're going to make a left turn, and all of a sudden you're going to decide to make a right turn. And you need everybody on board to help the momentum go. Yes. And like you had said earlier, like you love this because of the life lessons. Boy, yeah. What type of huge lessons are you learning right now in terms of being a part of a group that's collectively all coming together for one common purpose and sacrificing and building and caring and lifting? And sometimes there's nothing bad. Like sometimes I feel sorry for people that don't get to experience this. It's the best thing.
The fact that I've never experienced this before, I'm like, wow, I'm so happy I'm experiencing this now. But I think that something that I was just thinking about in terms of our team is like, and life lessons in general, is it's so easy for us to look at the outcome. and for us to look at our win and loss record and all of those things and kind of the tangible things. And I think the beauty with our team is that it's all of the intangibles and all of the things that happen along the way that kind of make the outcome just not as serious.
So I love this. I want to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I love this. And you have to create this like little bubble and create your own metrics.
Yes.
And in society, you're fighting Twitter, you're fighting people at the grocery store that are just evaluating whether you won or lost and saying congrats or I'm sorry.
Yes. Or what happened.
Yes.
Or
And yes. And you have to create a bubble that's like, no, we know.
Yeah.
And only you know. Only those 17 and your staff know.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that, something that our coach has preached and even written on our scouting reports and our practice plans and all of these things, is that like no one will believe until we do.
Yep.
Like it doesn't matter what anyone else believes as long as we believe, and then people will start to catch on. And we actually took a field trip to the Field of Dreams. So if you build it, they will come has also kind of been our theme for this season. And I think it's...
And sometimes the best things that can happen in a loss.
Absolutely. I think like even against Purdue, we ended up losing that game, but we walked out with our heads held high because they were number 5 in the country and we put up a battle on ESPN. No one would have expected that from Iowa volleyball. But we know that, and we know we could have won 2 sets and we could have maybe won that match. Same with last night in Minnesota. We could have maybe won that match. We took a set off of Minnesota, number 10 in the country right now. And everyone else is probably shocked, but we are like, wow, we can do that. And we know we can do more than that. And it's such a cool thing to look around and see that in everyone and see the kind of pride that we take on, even just like wearing Iowa volleyball gear out in public. Like people may look at us and be like, wow, Iowa volleyball, and may have all these thoughts about us, but we know what that means. We know what wearing something Iowa volleyball means because we know how rare and unique and how beautiful it is to be on the team at this time and just be a part of it growing.
100%. I love that. And I think the rest of your life, I can tell like this has been so impactful and you've got so much still ahead, but you can just see that you're going to draw on the experiences that you're going through, and you will for the next rest of your career at so many different points in your life because it's so rich right now with so much happening.
And I mean, the good and the bad and everything in between. And I think that's the best part is like when we win, great. When we lose right now, really stings, but later, great. Like it'll all be great to learn about.
So I want to talk about another part of your experience here, because before we started recording, you were talking to me about your fangirling.
Yes.
But you were talking about it in specific to Coach Lisa Salucci.
Yes. I am obviously very, very best friends with MJ, and kind of listening to MJ and learning more about field hockey and the things they talk about behind the scenes, and also talking to Harper, and kind of seeing the way they hold themselves and how they work together as a team and being able to go to field hockey games. And I appreciate coaches so much, and especially because I want to be one. And seeing what she's done for those players and what she continues to do with that program is such a cool thing. And even, of course, Lisa Bluter. I still to this day see her in the elevator and like it pinches my heart because I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this woman so much. Even Raina, Jan Jensen, like everyone and now the women's wrestling coach. I've actually gotten to know Clarissa really well, and I gave her wrestling recruits tours of campus actually, because they reached out and they're like, hey, do you have someone who can give them tours? And of course, Jim sent my name, and I've become really close with all of them. And I just think it's one of those things as a female who just really loves sports and especially coaching, that is just an awe moment that is so hard to explain unless you understand and unless you live in the sports world as a female, that I just think it's so great growing up. And again, even in the volleyball world, it's very common. And again, this is absolutely no offense to Jim, of course, but it's very common to see males as head coaches in female sports and just males on the coaching staff in general. And so seeing these powerful women and the fact that I have such close contact with them, and I know that they're so proud to be Hawkeyes, and I know that I can go to them at any moment for anything. And I know that they will just listen. And I mean,
well, I have to tell you, Bayley, so I was kind of like, chatting Lisa's, but I love both Lisas.
Yes.
So much. And I was chatting with Lisa Salucci and right before, and I was like, I'm going to go record a pod with Bayley. And she's like, oh my gosh, Bayley will be so great on your podcast. And I just think that like, that is really what's cool about Iowa. And, I felt that when I was a student athlete. So it gives me so much joy to know that there are student athletes here that are finding that culture and connection here on our coaching staff and within our department across teams, because that is rare and special. And that really is what was described in the documentary that went through like our history.
Yes.
And I felt like once we shared that with our student athletes, I feel like this year we've taken it to a whole nother level of connection and pride.
Oh my gosh. I sat in the stands at Carver and watched that. And I, of course, knew a little bit about Dr. Christine Grant and the past of female athletics here at Iowa, but I never knew it to that extent. And I left crying. Like, that was an unreal moment, especially because there were clips of me in that. And I was like, I can't believe I'm in that. I can't believe I know people in that. And even just, again, the fact that I have connections to these people within Iowa athletics is something completely outside of all of the other amazing things that I never realized I would be able to get as a Hawkeye student athlete. And I actually had gone to Lisa Bluter when Jim got hired, and I asked her, I was like, hey, I would love to come sit in on one of your practices because I want to see the environment and the way that your teammates talk to each other and the way that the coaching staff talks to each other. And the schedule never lined up, but she was like, doors open, like sent me to director of ops and was like, figure out a time if you can, we'd love to have you in here. And like, just people like that, I think, one, you just have to ask. That's something my mom's taught me. Like, if there's something I want to learn, I just need to ask about it. But the fact that there are people at Iowa that are just arms open wide and will just help you with whatever you want, whenever you want, and constantly help you learn. Like, when MJ told me that Lisa said she would grab a cup of coffee, I like started screaming in the car. I was like, are you kidding me right now? I was like, I could get a cup of coffee with her. I was like, absolutely. I'll get coffee with her every day if I could. Like, it's just the coolest thing because I think that it's so easy to look past all of the people who have like even just planted a seed. And there are so many empowering women here in the athletic department that, I mean, even Barbara Burke, like Lila Clary, that have just done so much for me and just have helped me learn so much and helped me realize what I want to do for others. And like, whether they know that or not, like, so many people have made a major impact on my life. And that's because of Hawkeye athletics and the people in it.
Well, it's perfect that you are here at Iowa at this time, Bayley. I am thrilled that the universe unfolded as it did because it really is perfect. You are destined to become a Hawkeye.
Absolutely. And
I know it's given a lot to you, but you're really giving a lot to Iowa. And I appreciate your passion and your enthusiasm, and we just love watching you play. And I'm so excited for Iowa volleyball. I mean, it's really, really fun to see this program grow and literally just before our eyes turn into what you guys are building.
Yeah, and it will keep going that way. And I'm so excited that we have people finally backing us and realizing that at the end of the day, whether the wins or losses come, that like as people, we are growing in the Iowa volleyball program and we are making people proud to put on anything Hawkeye volleyball.
So check out the Hawkeye volleyball schedule, all of our Hawkeye fans, and be sure to catch this team in action. Get a ticket and cheer them on. It is well worth it. So, Bayley, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
This has been HERkys Voice. The mission of the HERkys program is to help our Hawkeye community learn, support, and engage with Iowa women's athletics. To learn more about the HERkys initiative, visit HERkys.HawkeyeSports.com. Hawkeye fans, remember to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. Once you become a Fight for Iowa podcast subscriber, you'll automatically receive the latest episodes of the Fight for Iowa podcast, the HERkys Voice podcast, Hawk Talk replays, exclusive game day content, and more. The preceding has been a Learfield presentation on the Hawkeyes Sports Network.